Stalin's sharp tongue could be discussed for days on end. Even judging by his aphorisms, which he lavished on national history, it is safe to assume that Comrade Stalin was an unyielding and resolute man. In addition, a significant part of his morals was sharpness, which he cleverly used for the benefit of the country. Even in international relations he did not allow himself to be merciful, and during the next negotiations none of the foreign top did not manage to get away with his not delicate jokes. However, no one took offense at him. This only strengthened his unshakable authority. Let us look at the most famous witticisms of the leader of nations. How the British Prime Minister did not appreciate the sarcasm of the USSR Generalissimo during a dialogue with Churchill on August 12, 1942 about the opening of a second front. Stalin ironically said, "You should not be frightened of the Germans." Churchill's dissatisfaction was not over, that he was seriously considering leaving before any agreement could be reached. "Does he understand," said the English Prime Minister, "who he is dealing with?" As if he didn't know he was talking to a representative of the strongest empire that ever existed in the world. This was probably an isolated incident in which Stalin's harshness almost prematurely drove a foreign guest out of Moscow. How the fate of German army officers was decided at the 1943 Tehran conference. The question was raised about the future of the officer corps in the armed forces of Nazi Germany. Stalin's opinion was radical: to completely eliminate the general staff of the Wehrmacht. He noted, 50,000 are to be shot. Churchill did not approve of Joseph Vissarionovich's view, saying that then let them put him up against the wall. Stalin, as a staunch ally, relented in his own way. Not 50,000 enemy soldiers should go to execution, but only 49,000. How the strongholds of capitalism became interested in the Crimean Peninsula during the resolution of questions about the post-war arrangement of Europe. Churchill and Roosevelt presented Stalin with a joint initiative to give up the Crimea in exchange for some German territories. Stalin pledged to agree if his riddle was solved. He then showed the hand of his left hand, bent his ring finger with his little finger, leaving the other three for the foreign comrades to see, and asked, "Which finger is the middle one?" The British Prime Minister chose the index finger and the US President chose the middle one, while Stalin, with a restrained smirk, folded his fist and uttered, "That's the middle one. Hold the Crimea." Stalin, as a connoisseur of history at the 1945 Potsdam Conference, Harriman, the U.S. ambassador to the USSR, dignified Stalin with a tricky question. "I suppose, after the Hitlerites almost got to Moscow, you are happy to participate in the sharing of fallen Berlin?" Stalin muttered with a proud expression, "The Emperor Alexander even made it to Paris." Disagreements about the origins of cities. While the political disputes between the Allies had not yet had time to put down roots, Churchill said that Lviv was not a Russian city. Stalin said sneeringly, "I hope you haven't forgotten that Warsaw was." How the Allies disposed of the German ships when negotiations brought up a new dilemma about the fate of the German fleet. From Stalin it was proposed to share, and from Churchill to sink. The leader of the nations responded with lightning speed, "You can sink your half." The moon a tidbit for born conquerors. When the desire of the British and American leaders to subjugate as much territory as possible had already reached a critical point, Stalin suggested in all seriousness, "As I know, the moon is still free, you can share it too." When a threat to the whole world matures, the head of the Catholic Church enters the scene. In the pre-war period, Stalin once had a business meeting with the French foreign minister to discuss the maximum number of divisions of both countries ready for practical opposition to the growing German threat. Laval discreetly tried to ask Stalin for favor with Catholics and the activities of the Pope in the USSR. Joseph Vissarionovich muttered in surprise, "Wow, the Pope! How many divisions does he have?" The USSR leader's ruthless reaction. After the war, the relations of the former Allies became considerably strained. The policy of the Western Bloc became more and more contradictory. Stalin rightly characterized their position. Mr. Churchill and his American cronies were not stingy with the desperate measure, saying that if you recognize English and Great Britain and the United States as dominant, everything will be quiet and peaceful, but if not, prepare for war. But I firmly believe that no matter how sophisticated methods of warfare against the Soviet Union they have not developed, the result will be the same. They will go away humiliated and saddened, as it was 26 years ago.